Om Ajnanatimirandasya Snanasna Shlaka Sakshanritam Yena Tasman Shigave Namah Namo Vishwapadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Kanam Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachagini Nirvishesha Sunyavalvi Paskachai Dasatani Srila Prabhupada Ki. We are in the third part of the last 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. The first 6 chapters were about Bhakti Yoga, or Karma Yoga, I mean. How Karma Yoga leads to Bhakti Yoga, pronounced word, mainly. And in the middle 6 chapters, we have heard about Krishna speaking about himself and about devotional service. And in the last 6 chapters, we will hear how Jnana leads to Bhakti. This knowledge will help us to advance in devotional service. This very important knowledge, especially this 13th chapter. In this 13th chapter, Krishna will discuss 6 subject matters and in this chapter he will explain how the spirit soul becomes entangled in this world and how to liberate us from this entanglement. So Srila Prabhupada makes this point. One understands this chapter by philosophical speculation that he will be able to liberate himself from matter. So it's very important knowledge. This chapter begins with a question from Arjuna. He's asking a clarification of 6 terms. And these are the 6 subject matters of this chapter. So we will hear them. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Arjuna Uvacha. Prakritim Purusham Cheva. Shatram Shatrahyane Vacha. Etaviditumicchami. Jnanam Kiyam Sakeshava. So that's the question. He asked the meaning of Prakriti, material nature. Purusham, the enjoyer. Kshetra, the body. Kshetrahya, the knower of the body. Jnanam, what is knowledge? And what is Jnayam, the object of knowledge? These are the 6 terms he asked for clarification. And Krishna will immediately answer 2 of them, Kshetra and Kshetrahya. So, Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Idam Sariram Kanteya. Kshetram Iti Abhidiyate. Itayo vetitam prahu kshetraya iti tatvida. Translation. Arjuna said, "Oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti nature. Purusa, the enjoyer, and the field, and the knower of the field, and of knowledge, and the object of knowledge." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field." That So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, this body is the field of activity for the conditioned soul. So the body is our playground. There we can do work out all our material desires that we are, and that's our body is, we cannot go beyond it. We must stay in the body. It is limited. That's our playground, our field of activities. And so according to his capacity to dominate material nature, he gets a field of activity. That's interesting. According to his capacity to dominate, we get a capacity to dominate a certain body. By our past activities, Krishna gives us what we deserve and gives us this capacity. The capacity of the demigods is different. That the capacity of an ant is different. They get all different playgrounds of different residential quarters for the soul. Then, now the person who should not identify himself with the body is called kshatriya. Srila Prabhupada is clear. We should not identify ourselves with the body. But we are kshatriya. We are the knower of this body to a certain extent. That by the consciousness comes from the soul to the bloodstream, and we are aware of what's going on in the body. If someone touches us, we know, okay, someone is touching us. We have awareness within our residential quarters, within our play field, within the kshetra. That any person can consider that from childhood to old age, he undergoes so many changes and is still one person remaining. So we know every cell of the body changes every 6 years. After 6 years, either you are incarnate or you are a different person. But no, we know we are the same person. That if you go to the bank for a loan and ask for a loan, and then 10 years later, you don't say I'm a different person, all my cells change. No, you are still the same person, the person who signed the contract. So we know that we are different from the things used. That's tricky. We are in this body, and as a soul, we use the body. Through the intelligence, we use the body. We use the mind. We don't think we are the mind. We use the mind. We are not our feelings. That we say, I feel bad. What does it mean? A bad feeling is coming in the mind, and I identify with the bad feeling. But that's wrong, Srila Prabhupada says. That the person should not identify himself with the body. As long as we do that, why do we do that? Under the influence of lust, enemy number one. That covers our intelligence, and therefore we identify that. By that we understand how deeply we are conditioned. that conditioned souls, we cannot understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So in Vrindavan, a couple came to Prabhupada and said, please tell us about the rasa dance, Krishna's rasa dance. And Prabhupada said no, I cannot do that. And they asked again. Prabhupada said, no, I don't speak about that. And they asked them a third time, and Prabhupada said, I'm not qualified to speak about it. Maybe you are qualified to hear about it, but I'm not qualified. So if I'm not qualified, so Prabhupada says, so I should speak about it. If someone asks me questions about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, no, I'm not qualified. That because I identify with the body, with the kshetra. I don't identify with the spirit soul. Unless we are on the spiritual platform, we cannot speak about these things and discuss them. That once in the 70s was in Los Angeles. Devotees came together because in Krishna book it's mentioned that discussing the pastimes of the gopis that helps to make spiritual advancement. Of course, they interpreted it in their way. And they came together only to speak of the gopis and their pastimes, and some were bringing call it Krishna wears a peacock feathers. Today about peacock feathers and all these things, and they were discussing. And Prabhupada became very angry when he heard that. He said, "Stop this nonsense immediately. That they will not become purified; they will become putrefied. If you are not purified, you cannot discuss these things." One can say, so you should not jump to the 10th canto. But then someone may say, but Srila Prabhupada gave us Krishna book. Yes, he gave us Krishna book, but it's different from the 10th canto. It's carefully mixed with our philosophy so that we should not understand things wrongly. So these things have to be considered. Are we qualified? That if we start discussing these things, that and reading things which are not in Prabhupada's books, no, study first Prabhupada's books. That Prabhupada's books are pure. All the other books, very doubtful. I tell you frankly, full of deviations, because it's not written by pure souls. You have to be very careful with that. The devotees write so many books, and they publishing, but read first Prabhupada's books, not these books. That anyway, that otherwise we will create a society of neophytes and create big problems. So this is the knowledge we need to understand this point, that we know that we are different from things to be used. That so we are not the mind, we are not the intelligence, we are the soul. That and the soul should use the intelligence. And the intelligence, based on the soul directions, should instruct the mind, direct the mind. But the soul can only instruct the intelligence when it's fully realized. Therefore, we need knowledge coming from the scriptures. And that knowledge we are discussing here. And the 13th chapter is very important. Very important. At the end, 13th chapter, how the living entity comes in contact with material nature. We will hear about that. Bhakti Prakati Jan Gunan. That's the problem. We will hear. And now it is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activity, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. So this is what we will hear in this chapter. So I have here this PowerPoint. We have again PowerPoints, 13 chapters till the end PowerPoints. These are the six objects we must remember. Prakriti, Purush, Kshetra, Kshetrajya, Jnana, Jnana. So Prakriti is nature. Purusha is enjoyer. There are two enjoyers. Krishna is the Bhaktaram Sakapatapasam, is the supreme enjoyer. And the Purush, we think ourselves the enjoyers, unfortunately. Then Kshetra is the body, subtle and gross. The Kshetrajya is the knower of the body. Srila Prabhupada will explain in the purpose there are two knowers of the body. There is the soul and the super soul, two knowers of the body. And they are different knowers. And there is Jnana, knowledge. There's knowledge, acquiring knowledge is a process. And that process of acquiring knowledge will be explained from verses 8 to 12 in this chapter. Very important. And Jnana is the object of knowledge. What's the object of knowledge in this material world? The object of knowledge will be explained is the super soul. The super soul is in every atom. That is to be known. What's to be known is the object, Shreyam. That is the super soul. So we have these six subject matters, and we will hear how they relate to each other. Okay. So Kshetrajya Vibhaga Yoga is the Sanskrit term of the title of this chapter. So this is verse 1-2. So in verse 1-2 here, we have learned about the kshetra, the body made of senses. It's a field of activity for the conditioned souls. We cannot go outside of that. And the kshetrajya is one who knows the body, the soul and the super soul. So this is here. Let's see. Verse 3, we'll come to that in the next verse. First, let's see, there are quotes. And this is a farmer. The farmer is called Kshetrajya. And the farmer is plowing the land with Kshetra. He knows that I'm plowing this ground, so we are using this body. We are the knower of the body, we use this body. He's planting the seed and reaping the results. And what is the fruit that one gets? It is according to what he plants. So what are we doing with the body? Are we using it in Krishna's service or otherwise? So similarly, the person, the soul, as a field, which is basically his body. And what do you get from the body? Happiness and distress. He will reap from this field. Happiness and distress. Happiness and distress is for the kshetra, the mind, not for the soul. The soul has nothing to do with that. The mind experience this happiness and distress, and we identify. So when the mind say now feel bad, and we feel bad, and then and then something happy happens, some humoristic and or enjoyment is there, and the mind is full happiness. That and we think, oh no, I'm happy. It's false. That means conditioned. You are controlled by the mind and the body. A very serious thing. That and we want to come out of this control. That so this body is called the field of activity, and the doer of the soul is called the knower of the seal of the field. Was in Miami, 1975, not far from here. But the second quote is in Paris. It's more the area where I live. Etc. also means the platform or stage on which we are dancing. Etc. means the person who is dancing. When you dance, you know that you are dancing on this ground, on this platform. So you are the knower. Therefore, kshetragya. And the platform on which you are dancing is kshetra. So in this material world, we are all dancing. How we are dancing? By getting a particular type of body. That is kshetra. There must be some platform. So we are on the platform of being conscious of the body. And if we don't control the mind, engage the mind, then the mind will make us dance on the platform. And will not be good. That's conditioned. So these are the first teachings here of this chapter. So in answer to Arjun's question, Krishna explains how the body is made of senses and is the field of activity of the conditioned soul. The living entity receives a certain type of body according to its capacity to dominate material nature. You get a certain type of body according to the capacity to pay the rent. You get an apartment according to your capacity to pay the rent. And you get such a body, and you may get a human body, but there will be some defective liver later, or this or that, and sometimes diseases. We don't know where it comes from. That so one who identifies himself with the body is kshatriya, or the knower of the body. That and Prabhupada writes in the purpose, we should not identify with the body. That the knower is different from the body, as the possessor of something is different from that which he possesses. Good. That was the introduction. Now we will see what Krishna says further. Like 3. Kshetrayam sapimam vidi sarvekshate bharata kshetra kshetranayo jnanam yattachyanamutam mama. O sign of Bharat, you should understand that I'm also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body, its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So Krishna says, I'm also in every body. We are there, but he's there with us. So is Krishna far from us? No, very close. That he is in our heart. And he is controlling material nature of the nature of all our bodies. And let's us think now, and he observes us what we are thinking, what our mood is, and what our desires are, that he knows everything. Prabhupada, he was in contact with the super soul. And the silver soul informed them of everything what was going on. There he could see and understand everyone's mood. Nobody could hide something for Prabhupada. So first here, so it is said here, there are three different topics that of study: the living entity, the Lord, the living entity, and matter. Three topics of study. Let's see here. So this is verse 3. Prakriti, Purush, and Ishvara. So knowledge means understanding the position of these three: Prakriti, Purush, and Ishvara. Prakriti means material nature. Purush means the enjoyer. Ishvara means the controller. So these are three. I don't know if, yeah. Now, this is not easy to understand. Try to listen very attentively. You have an easel, and on the easel you have a painter, a painting. Painting is standing on the easel. And then you have the painter. The painter is painting the painting on the easel. So that is, Srila Prabhupada writes that in the purport, that it says, Ishvara, the controller, who is Ishvara here in this context? The painter, and who is Ishvara? It's a super soul. He's the controller. So he's the painter. He's painting. And then, what is he painting? What is the painting? Is the Purush, is a living entity. Yeah. That, And then you have Prakriti, nature. Nature is the easel. This we will try to understand. That the Srila Prabhupada writes, one has to understand the position of Prakriti, nature. That's the easel. Purusha, the enjoyer of nature. That the Purusha is the painting. Because who puts the Purusha, the living entity, in material nature? That it is Ishvara, Krishna. Krishna is the painter. Can someone explain what I just said? Yeah. The painting is the Purusha. It's us, the conditioned soul. Yeah. So Krishna puts us in material nature. He paints and puts us in material nature. By material. The condition. Yeah. In conditioned state. Yeah. And easel is material nature. is the background, is material nature. Liberated state we will try to understand later, but not mix up. Yeah. How can we be the enjoyer? Yeah, we should not think ourselves the enjoyer. But Krishna paints us because of our desire. He puts us in material nature because we desire. We will see that later. The cause of our being conditioned is explained further. Bhakti Pragati Janguna. We will analyze that deeply. Okay. Good. The Lord says, I'm the knower of the field of activities in every individual body. The individual body may be the knower of his own body, but is not in knowledge of other bodies. So the jiva is the proprietor and controller and knower of his own body. But Krishna is the proprietor, controller, and knower of all bodies. And Krishna is a proprietor and controller of and knower of all bodies. How can we understand that? Srila Prabhupada writes, it's like a king who is the original proprietor of the kingdom, and the citizens are secondary proprietor. So the body is called kshetra, and within it dwells the owner of the body, and the Supreme Lord, who knows both the body and the owner of the body. So Krishna knows what's going on in our body, but he knows also what's about us, the soul, and our desires. Yeah, true. The super soul. The super soul and Krishna are non-different. They are expansions. Yeah. So the body is called kshetra, and within dwells the owner of the body, and the Supreme Lord knows both the body and the knower of the body. Therefore, it's called the knower of all fields. So he knows all fields. All fields. We know our field. Perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the super soul is known in terms of Vedic literature as jnana. That's another definition of jnana. This perfect knowledge of the individual soul and the constitution of the super soul. That how they are different. So then Srila Prabhupada speaks about what we will hear further in this chapter. In this chapter will also be explained that out of the two knowers, one is fallible and the other is infallible. One is superior and the other is subordinate. One who understands the knowers of the field to be one and the same contradicts the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one who is a monist who thinks there is only one soul and no super soul and a separate jiva, he contradicts what Krishna says here in Bhagavad Gita. One who misunderstands, I'm also the knower of the field of activities. One who understands a rope to be a serpent is not in knowledge. At the end, real knowledge is to know that the super soul is the controller of both the fields of activities and the finite enjoyer. That's us, the Purush, the Jiva, the foolish living entity who tries to enjoy. So what Krishna is saying here is the Supreme Lord is a proprietor, the controller and knower of all bodies. But the Jiva is the proprietor, controller, and knower only of his own body. So knowledge means to understand the position of Prakriti, Purush, Ishvara. So the easel, the painting, and the painter. That That's knowledge. Good. There is a quote. The quotes. I think there are many quotes on this. We cannot read them all. Yeah, a lot of quotes. Yeah. Oh, this is nice. Why did Krishna dance with others' wives? Because he's the owner of all bodies. Actually, he's the proprietor. De Sarvasya Bharata. I'm not a proprietor. He's the proprietor. So if the proprietor dances with his maidservants or devotees, what is wrong with this? He's their proprietor. You are not a proprietor. Supersoul is the real proprietor. Krishna says, Bhaktam Sarva Tapasam Sarva Lokamashvadam. He's supreme proprietor. Surdam Sarva Bhutanam. He's actually the friend. If I'm a lover, I'm not a friend. Krishna is a real friend. So if the gopis dance with their real friend, what is wrong there? But those rascals who do not know Krishna think he is immortal. Immortal. Internals. Yeah, anyway, a lot of quotes. Can read them on your own. But in Poland, that's 30 years ago, a Christian nun started a process against the Hare Krishnas. This, and what was the charge? They are worshipping a god who is immoral. He dances with others' wives. Serious. That came before court, and there, after the opening of the case, our lawyer asked the jury that Your Honor, let me ask a question to this nun. And then it was permitted, and he asked one question to this nun. What's the meaning of the ring out on your hand? And the case was dismissed immediately. Finished. What does this ring mean? They are married with Jesus Christ. How many nuns are married with Jesus Christ? How can he marry so many? It's immoral. The case was dismissed. And Srila Prabhupada, someone came to Srila Prabhupada, and an Indian gentleman, he said, Krishna is immoral. He's dancing with others' wives. And Srila Prabhupada said, you are immoral, because you think your wife belongs to you, but it's Krishna's wife. So that was a direct reply. Okay. Let's go. Set verse 4. Tat kshetram yashayat riksha yat vikari yatasayat sasayo yat prabhavascha tat samasanameshvinu. Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what its influences are. That so I have here. In this verse, Krishna raises 5 points. He will elaborate on this later in this chapter. First, how the body is constituted will be explained in verses 6 and 7. Second, what changes the bodies undergo will be explained in verses 7 to 20. How and when the body is produced will be explained in verses 6, 21, 22, and 30. And then the identity of the knower of the field of activities will be explained in verses 14 to 18 and 23. And the influence of the knower will be explained in verses 14 till 18. So Krishna will in this chapter clarify all these points. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes, so one has to know how this body is constituted, the materials of which this body is made, and whose control this body is working. That how the changes are taking place, where from the changes are coming, what the causes are, what the reasons are, and what the ultimate goal of the individual soul is, and what the actual form of the individual soul is. At the end, but one should be careful not to consider the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every body to be one with the individual soul, the jiva. That this is something like equating the potent and the impotent. That see on the slides. That's so that we discussed the Prakriti is the easel, Purusa the painting, Ishvara the painter, and then I think that will be 5. We will come to that. That's the first we will discuss now. 5. And that's an interesting verse. Rishibir Paudagi Tam Chandra Bir Fidadai Pitai Pramasutra Pada Sheva Etumad Bir Finishitam. That knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all the reasoning as to cause and effect. So Krishna, he is the Supreme Lord, and he refers to the sages, to the sadhus, and he refers to the Vedanta Sutra, the scriptures, Shastra. Krishna refers to Guru Shastra, Sadhu Guru Shastra, Guru Sadhu Shastra, 3. That, let's see here. Vedanta Sutra, Guru Sadhu Shastra is referring, I think that's in the purport here that we will discuss. Okay. First, let's try to understand. Learned scholars and standard authorities always give evidence from previous authorities. So that we must learn. If we speak about Krishna, we must always back up with verses, scriptures, what Prabhupada said, Guru Sadhu Shastra, not speaking otherwise. The same what we are, if we do something, we should back it up with Guru Shastra and Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. All three are important. We cannot have spiritual life if one of the three is missing. Yeah. If our individual experience is based on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra and in agreement, then you can. but you must check if it's in agreement with Go, Sada, and Shastra. That because we said before, Krishna consciousness is following the dictations of the super soul. And sometimes we get from within a certain direction, but is it the direction of my contaminated mind, or is it Krishna telling me? Then go Sadhana Shastra, you check, and then you know that if it's in agreement, it's Krishna from within. That's the way how we do that. Yeah. Okay. That's the higher and lower nature exists due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. But the supersoul, which is infallible, is uncontaminated by the three qualities of nature and is transcendental. The word Chandobi refers to the various Vedic literature. The Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, which is a branch of the Jayaveda, describes nature, the living entity, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated before, Kshetra is the field of activities, and there are two Kshetrajya, the individual living entity, the Supreme living entity. And then Prabhupada speaks in the purport about the Taittiriya Upanishad 2.5, the Brahma Pucham Pratishta. That you must remember. Brahman Pucham Pratishta. A question of your exam could be, explain the Brahman Pucham Pratishta. And there 5 levels of consciousness are described. And the first level described here, the lowest level is Annamaya. Anna means food consciousness. Animals, they are all very food conscious. The whole day they are searching for food. That's Annamaya. Some human beings have the same consciousness. They live to eat, become very fat. That's their pleasure, Annamoya. But this is animal consciousness. And a little higher consciousness is Pranamoya. Pranamoya means, oh, I'm not the only one who is seeking after food. I have competitors. I'm not alone. And I have to defend myself sometimes. So it's awareness of other living entities. I'm not alone. Pranamaya. And then the third level is Jnana Moya or Mana Moya. That's the consciousness of the human being, more or less. The conditioned soul. That they think, thinking, feeling, willing. That's me. My emotions. I like art. They identify with their intellect also. I like science, art. I like beautiful music. That I like social interaction with others. That and I like to study. This is Jnana Moya or Mana Moya, identification with the mind. That, but then one step higher is Vijnana Moya. Vijnana Moya is the point where one when one decides, yes, or where one understands, I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul. I'm different from this body. And one studies Bhagavad Gita and start to understand, yes, there is a process to come to self-realization. So all this knowledge is there, but it's not realized. That's Vijnana Moya. But then Vijnana Moya, when one practices devotional service and one brings this knowledge in practice, one becomes purified. And when one is liberated, one comes to Ananda Moya. And Ananda Moya is spiritual bliss. And that's our normal state. That's the normal consciousness of the spirit soul is Ananda Moya. That the other lower are contaminated. So the first four consciousness are material. Only the fifth, Ananda Moya, is spiritual. So then, therefore, Prabhupada writes on the next, at the end of the purport, if the living entity that decides to enjoy in dovetailing himself with Ananda Moya, he becomes perfect. That so the dovetailing with Ananda Moya, Krishna is always Ananda Moya. So if we connect with Krishna, then we become full of Ananda Moya. And that's the process of devotional service. And then we become perfect. One is to search for the truth, this truth in the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra. How to come to this Ananda Moya. That's the purpose of Vedanta Sutra. So a lot of things here. So although I recap what's in this verse and in this purport, although Krishna is the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Authority, is referring to the great sages and Vedanta Sutra to support these statements. So Krishna refers to Guru, to Sadhu, and to the scriptures. Thus, as Arjuna's Guru, he refers to Sadhu and Sastra conforming statements to show Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra are all required to establish the truth. So if you try to study the scriptures and you don't have an association with devotees, you don't have a guru, only the scriptures. What's going to happen? What's the problem? No progress, why? Yeah, it's a real life novel, but why? Yes, we may interpret it according to our own imagination. That's certainly that. Please. No action, only a renunciation. Maybe, yes. But why guru? Why do we need a guru? If I study only how to drive a bus from the books, and then I'm going to drive a bus, who will drive with me? Please? Yes, we need someone who has realized this knowledge. He has done it. He has gone through all the problems and knows the challenges and can guide you, can explain you that you cannot learn to play a musical instrument from the solfège books. No, will not happen. You must learn it from an expert musician. He can show you. You cannot become a surgeon by just reading all the books on medicine and surgery. No, you need the guidance of an expert surgeon who teaches you everything. It's not going to happen. I know that that they found someone, a devotee in Siberia, or I don't know exactly where, but he got Prabhupada's books and he was alone and he tried to practice. And he read about offering food to Krishna. So he was offering food to Krishna, and then the prasadam was throwing away. He didn't know what to do with it. He offered his food to Krishna, but then he threw it away. So it doesn't. He never seen. He never had association with devotees. That's the problem. They will show him how to do that. So that's only the scriptures. That's a problem. And if you have only a guru and no scriptures, what's the problem?
Mental speculation.
Hmm?
Mental
That's
speculation.
that's possible because you cannot verify it with authorities. That yeah. Please, local. Yeah, you cannot verify if your guru is bona fide. Is he following the scriptures? You don't know. Yeah. You have no. Yes, you cannot verify with the scriptures or with other devotees that you don't have sadhus. That's the problem. There are six problematic scenarios. Like one can only a guru without others. That will not work. Or only sadhu will also not work. Only shastra will also not work. Only sadhu and shastra omitting guru will not work. Guru and shastra omitting sadhu will not work. Sadhu and guru omitting shastra will not work. So that's 6 combinations. You need guru, sadhu, and shastra always. That because otherwise, each other combination will lead to misconceptions and malpractice. That you need also the association of devotees, how to practice. Otherwise, how are you going to practice kirtan? It remains just an idea that there are no devotees. How are you going to learn how to interact with devotees? That's important for making advancement. So every of these other options are causing problems. Therefore, yeah, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That good, I think. And then, according to Upanishads, there are 5 realizations of the absolute truth: Anamaya, Pranamaya, Jnanamaya, or Manamaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya. Yeah, described in the purport. That and the Anandamaya is the natural state of the spirit soul in the spiritual world, Anandamaya. That, then our heart is full with love for Krishna, and we are completely blissful. The Supreme Lord expands himself to enjoy transcendental bliss. In the field of activities, the living entity is considered to be the enjoyer, and different from him is Anandamaya. So we are enjoying the material world, but Krishna is Anandamaya. If the living entity dovetails or connects with Krishna, then he becomes also Anandamaya. And he becomes perfect. So that process of linking up with Krishna is devotional service. You get the point? Yes? We are speaking about Krishna. Krishna, Bhagavan realization. Brahma Pucha Pratistam. There are 5 stages of consciousness. If the consciousness is completely expanded, It's Ananda in contact with Krishna. But that's only with Krishna. There is no Ananda in the Brahman. Nothing. It's peace, Shanti, that's Brahman. Ananda is, they imagine Ananda. These impersonal, these Mayavadis. That's, they give their devotees or their followers names of with Ananda Swami. but they are not Ananda. They cannot reach it.
Sense of misery.
Yeah.
Peaceful
Yeah.
status, they call it Ananda.
Yeah.
It's not positive. Yes.
It's realizing I'm not a body, I'm a spirit soul, but they don't realizing they are not realizing what is this spirit soul. It's a servant of Krishna. It's just they are not realizing they are the body. And it's good, nice, but not sufficient. That I think, yeah, we have, yeah, the Brahma Sutra Padasya Sheva 8 Etamadbhya Nishitam does this verse, and it's a long quote that you can read, and another quote, and another quote. So if you want to understand this deeply, read all these quotes. Very nice. It's too long for us to read them all. That and now text 6, 7. 6, 7. Yep. Mahabhutan yahankaro bodhya vyaktameva cha indriyani dasaikam cha panchasandriya gochara Icchatvesha sukam dukam sangata shetanadriti etachachan samasena savikara mudaritam. The 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the senses, and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions. These are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. So the field of activity is constituted of 24 elements. We look at these elements back in the Sankhya. So here, there's 24 elements. The body is made of earth, fire, water, air, and ether, the Mahabhuta, the 5 gross elements. And then 3, the subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, false ego, 3 elements. Then you have the unmanifested state of the 3 modes, the pradhan, that's the cause of all material manifestation. And 5 objects of the senses, smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. The 5 working senses, voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. And the 5 senses acquiring knowledge, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. So that is the kshetra, 24 elements, analyzed according to Sankhya philosophy. That and these kshetra made of these 24 elements, it goes to 6 changes. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, it begins to decay, and it vanishes. I'm between 5 and 6. The body is between 5 and 6. And we say, I am. That's false ego. Yes. the body goes to six changes. The kshatriya is different, and the kshatriya doesn't change. We do not change. The body is changing. So this is the knowledge here in this section. That's the purport. The 5 elements are described there. Yeah. The 5 great elements are a gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of false ego, technically called the materialistic conception of tamasi buddhi, intelligence and ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested states of the 3 modes of nature. Unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhan. So this pradhan is also an element. But yeah, so that is all explained in this purport. Now let's see. We went to the purport. We have gone 6, 7. Verse 6 lists the 24 elements, and verse 7 describes the 7 qualities of the mind derived from the interaction of the 24 elements. Okay. Then we have, is there a quote? No quote. Okay. Any questions? Yes? Mahatat Pradhan is when Krishna, as I remember correctly, put into Brahman the 3 modes unmanifested and injects the living entities and time, kala, thus pradhan. But then this pradhan, the changes, because living entities are injected. Its pradhan is unmanifested. But then with contact with the false ego of the, or in contact with the material desires of the living entities which are injected, this material desires causes, interacts with these 3 modes unmanifested and create false ego. And then everything becomes Geldiv manifested and it becomes Matattva. That
Pradhan is coming from outside Mata.
a pradhan is unmanifested material nature. You cannot see it. The Matattva you can see. That then it becomes gross, it becomes manifest.
Material nature, when it does not have a form, it is all there. It is not in that form. It's only when Pradhan interacts with the Mahatma that form starts to form.
The pradhan does not interact. The interaction happens within pradhan, and that interaction I just explained, and then it becomes materialized. Pradhan is a state of unmanifest, and Matattva is manifest. And to go from one state to another, it's a living entity, the living entities, the spirit souls, their material desires make everything move. That you can, it's explained twice in the Bhagavatam, in the 2nd canto and the 3rd canto. If you study the Bhagavatam, you will read all these things. It's explained there in detail. Sometimes devotees mix up these terms, pradhan and matattva. But if you understand the process, then it's clear. Good.
Pradhan is the first manifestation from Mahavishnu, when the creation takes place.
Yeah.
And that Pradhan, like all the material elements as well as the living entities are there, the Pradhan.
Unmanifested.
Amen.
But then they come manifest because of the desires of the living entity. And because the desires of the living entity interact with the three modes of material nature unmanifested, which are in equilibrium. In that equilibrium, so means they are in balance, passion, ignorance, and goodness. But that balance is broken by the passion coming from the living entity's desires, and it starts to move, to manifest, and then it's and then it and then the mode of goodness combines with this, because the first thing that's manifested from the living entity is false ego. That's the first element. It's the most subtle. And that false ego then combines with the mode of goodness and creates mind. Combines the false ego, combining with passion creates intelligence. And when false ego combines with ignorance, tamas, it creates bhumira, pranala, vayorkam, the 5 elements. And then one can see it, it becomes manifest, and then becomes matattva. That it's all still together in that, but from that matattva then in that process, the universal cells are first formed. And that happens in the process that it comes out of the pores of Mahavishnu. It's formed. And then these universes are formed like balls. And then Mahavishnu or Karanodakashaya Vishnu enters in each of the universe as Kapodakashaya Vishnu. And then Kapodakashaya Vishnu enters the universe, but there are no windows or something, and he starts to sweat, it's too warm. and half of the universe is filled with sweat of Kapodakashaya Vishnu. It's transcendental, but anyway. And then he lies down on Ananta's chase, on that, and therefore this ocean is called, because it's coming from Kapodakashaya Vishnu, it's coming from him, it's called Garbhodoka ocean. He lies on this ocean, and then we know that a lotus grows from his abdomen, and Brahma is born, and so it continues. There's a whole story. We should study that in the Bible. Yeah. Good. Then let's pause for 10 minutes till 5:25. So now we will discuss the next section, which is from verse 8 till 19. So Krishna had described before Kshatraya, the knower of the field and the field. And now Krishna will describe the process of knowledge, that beginning with amanitvam, humility, and culminating in the realization of the absolute truth. That's the first part of this section. The second part is about Jneyam, the object of knowledge, or the soul and the super soul is discussed. So previously, Krishna explained the soul and the super soul as Kshatraya, the knowers of the field. But by understanding the difference between the body and the soul and the super soul, and by following the process of knowledge described here, we can transcend the dualities. Because it's by this attachment and aversion we identify with the body. We can transcend these dualities. and realize our position as an eternal servitor subordinate to Krishna, and we can attain the supreme destination. So in these verses 8 to 12, that there, I think 20 items are discussed, and we will hear about them now. Up. Amanitvam madambitvam aimsak shantir archavam acharyo pashnam chacham steryamatvam vinishaha Indiakte suvarahyam anahankara evacha chanmamrita charavyadi dukkado sanadarshanam Asaktyana vishvanga putra darihyadishu nityam sa samasittatvam istanisto papatishu Mayi sanyanya yogana bhaktiravya vicharina vivikta desha sevitvam aratir jana samsadi adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattvaganah tadarshanam etahyanamiti puktam ahyanam yat atonyata. Translation. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the object of the senses, gratification, or renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. Now, go back to our slideshow. So this section that we are discussing, verses 8 to 12 is a process of knowledge, and verses 13 till 18 is object of knowledge, so the soul and supersoul. By understanding the difference between the body and the soul and the supersoul, and by following the process of knowledge, the soul can transcend dualities, realize its eternal subordination to Krishna, and attain the supreme destination. Okay. So the process of knowledge is the means, should be means to get out of the entanglement of the material body. That's how to get out of the material body. That so it's not knowledge, it is the process of knowledge. What does it mean? That if you are practicing this point, you will realize this knowledge. That so the most essential point out of the 20 points. So there are 20 points here. Two are most important. The two are most important that Acharya Upashanam, approaching a spiritual most master. That and the second one is Ananya Yogena, by unalloyed devotional service. So one must approach a spiritual master and one must engage in devotional service. Because if you perform devotional service under the guidance of a spiritual master, all the other items will develop. That's important. Without devotional service, the other points become useless. When one who performs devotional service automatically develops all the other good qualities. And now we should understand the definition of each of these qualities. We will go to the purport and try to understand each of these qualities. First is humility. That dus niet van. Without humility, one cannot get knowledge. Very important. That so the real purpose of knowledge. Further, humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. That's Prabhupada's definition. Honor or dishonor pertaining to this body is useless. That you are honored all of your life, or you are dishonored all of your life. One person is honored during his whole life, and the other is dishonored. And then what happens? They die, it's all gone. It's for the body. Then you get another body for the body. Useless. Pertaining to honor or dishonor pertaining to this body is useless. But the honor of being a great devotee of the Lord, that's relating to the soul there. And that's eternal. We see the honor of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj lived, many, these pastimes are thousands of years ago. And still is celebrated as the greatest devotee. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a test to see how far is progressing. He can judge by these items. That's very important for us. If we read these verses again, at every point you should think, do I approach a spiritual master? Am I clean? Am I self-controlled? That do I see birth, death, old age, and disease as evil? That do I see freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest? Do I practice that? That even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. That do unalloyed devotion. Do I try to practice that? Acting only for the pleasure of Krishna, not asking something in return. Living in a solitary place. Srila Prabhupada will explain. Living in a solitary place. If you only associate with devotees, then you are living in a solitary place, Prabhupada said. That acting the impulse of self-realization, is that the goal of my life? Or I have other things to achieve in my life? That philosophical search for the absolute truth. Am I interested in to know about Krishna and how to get out of this material world? That is knowledge, Krishna says. The rest is ignorance. So humility, yes.
Disease and old age considered evil.
Do you like to take birth and die? But do you want to get out of this cycle of birth and death?
Everything is evil.
It's evil because because this cycle of birth and death makes us conditioned and rotating in this world. We are rotting in this world.
We're not going down the plan.
Yeah. What are we doing here?
Nothing.
That Srila Prabhupada said, we came here to pass through. Is that the purpose of your life? No, it's evil. It's against the purpose of life. That is to getting out of this cycle of birth and death. That if one thinks everything is all right, yes, that life is not so bad, you remain here. That then your we are in ignorance, deep ignorance. Yeah. It's not after reading that the wife said to the man, okay, we separate. I'm going away. But it's evil, Krishna says. No, that's not the purpose. That we should use each other's association to advance in devotional service. But if we don't do that, then it's evil. But if we do it, we take each other's association to advance, and then it becomes a help. So without humility, one cannot understand this knowledge. One must accept the truth that he is not God. Not God means not a proprietor, not an enjoyer, at least not the primary enjoyer. We are also enjoyers, but not the enjoyer. We are the secondary enjoyer. We offer first to Krishna the food, and then we enjoy. That we are secondary, always. So one must accept that he is not God. Then one can ascend the staircase of knowledge and reach Krishna. So that's the beginning. If you don't do that here, that this you cannot start beginning developing knowledge. That chapter 13, verse 13. That's for later. That let's go back. Okay. So in the purport, non-violence. Actual non-violence means not to put others in distress. That's quite interesting. Not putting others in distress. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pain. So unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. So we should preach that. So if one enlightens others, and by that they can leave this material entanglement, that is non-violence. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insults and dishonor from others. Tolerance. And Srila Prabhupada refers to Prahlad Maharaj. He had so many times dishonored by his father and bear insults. Simplicity means that without diplomacy, one should be straightforward, that he can disclose the real truth even to an enemy. And then accepting a spiritual master is an essential instruction. Srila Prabhupada said, one must accept the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services, and so that he will be pleased and bestows blessings on the disciple. That if he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will it make the disciple immediately advanced without the disciples following the regulative principles, or the regulative principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. That's interesting. That there are two kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. External cleanliness taken above, and internal cleanliness. One has to think always of Krishna and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So many times you see people very nicely dressed, nice suits, and they look very clean, but their subtle body stinks. That's the problem. That internal cleanliness, they think on sense gratification and sex and all these things. Externally, yeah, nice. Steadiness means that one should very determined to make progress in spiritual life. We will hear about that steadiness that requires that utsaya, nisaya, daryat, tat karma pavartanat, then sankotyara, satorvite, sadbir, bhaktir, prasidati. 6 items favorable for devotional service. Utsaha, enthusiastic. That's nisaya, determination. Daryat, patience. Tat karma pavartanat, following the rules and regulations of devotional service, engage in spiritual activities. Sangotyara, give up association of non-devotees and follow in the footsteps of devotees. These are 6 principles favorable for the practice of devotional service that you will hear in the nectar of instruction. That yes, self-control means that one should accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. Further, therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of footsteps offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but a beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. There is no other subject in Bhagavad Gita than devotional service. False ego means accepting the body as oneself. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. That we cannot give up our ego because ego means identity. We out of course to give up false identification with the body. And then we should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, and old age and disease. There are descriptions in the various Vedic literature of birth. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, woe of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother is suffering, are very graphically described. So the first devotee I met was Vishnu Goswami from Gujarat at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. I was an accountant living in Ghent, in Flanders, in Belgium. And some way or other, I got an invitation for a lecture by Swami. And I was in a house of Shriyastras, normal house. So after my job with my confection suit, I went to ring at that house. I never met devotees. But I read already Krishna book. I never met devotees. And Bhakta Gustavo opens the door and I ask, is the lecture here? And he said, yes, please come in. And he shows to the living. I'm going into the living room and there I got the most exotic experience in my life. I saw people sitting there dressed in bed sheets with some tuft of hair shaved. Was thinking, my mind said maybe you should go out again. But the Swami was sitting there. I didn't know what the Swami was. But he said to me, maybe you can leave your shoes outside. I went outside my shoes and went in, and then they began to chant all these mantras, and my mind became wild, saying, you should not stay here, my mind said. But somewhere or other, I stayed, and after the chanting, there was an altar with garnitai and flowers, but I didn't know what deities was. That was not in the framework of my existence. I saw only flowers, not the deities. And then the Swami started to give a lecture from the Bhagavatam, third canto, the chapter on the movements of the living entity. And these verses describe exactly what's mentioned here. The unborn baby becomes, in the womb of the mother, becomes conscious, and it's graphically described in the Bhagavatam. So it's after this lecture, I understood I'm in trouble. And the next day, I started to chant immediately 12 rounds. And it took me a week to chant 16 rounds. And I never stopped chanting since then. But these verses woke me up. I'm in trouble. So that's very important. That's an impetus for spiritual life. If we think everything is okay, then it's very difficult to make spiritual advancement. So that is important. Yeah, where was I? Yeah. Yeah, then further. Yeah, the unborn, in Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn child stay in the womb of the mother is suffering, are all very graphically described. Then further, no one wants to be diseased and no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth and death, old age and disease. There is no impetus for making advancement in spiritual life. If we think if it's all right, there's no impetus. So one need only to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and accept remnants of footsteps offered to Krishna, have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. So there came some persons to the temple, and that was in the 70s. And they came to take prasad. And then the temple president asked that you can also do some service. But they said, no, we come only for prasad. So they wrote Prabhupada, these new devotees, they only want to take prasad. Prabhupada said, good, let them take prasad and tell them between the bites to also chant Hare Krishna. So that's mentioned here. That's the beginning of the process. That in the beginning, Srila Prabhupada said in the beginning, you can fill up till here. That so in the beginning, Prahlad Maharaj said the first Sunday feast that they will really filling up with mountains, and then they would take seconds again a month. But of course, in nectar of devotion, it's said one should not eat too much, even if it's prasad, because you will not be able to control your senses. So later on, they understood, but in the beginning, Prabhupada was like that. Let them eat their way back to Godhead. So he can mold his family life in the way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles. Then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if it's not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. This purpose is so important. In this purpose, Srila Prabhupada gives all practical hints how to practice that. So without this purpose, what should we do? That happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate. And further, naturally, when one is adopted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic man. One should make research to understand the self that is recommended here. So this service to the inward soul, to the Supreme Soul, is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So bhakti or devotional service is eternal. One should be established in this philosophical conviction. In the Bhagavatam, it's 1 to 11, it said that Vedanti tat vavidas tat vam gyātam apvayam. Those who are actually knowers of the Absolute Truth know that the self is realized in three phases: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in realization of the Absolute Truth. Engaged in the devotion service of the Lord, that is perfect knowledge. Further, but unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at the lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. So what we solely should remember here, so this is the process of knowledge. That's the process to get knowledge, realize knowledge. There is the process of knowledge. Sometimes it's mistaken, but Prabhupada says, as the interaction between 24 elements. But it's actually the means to get out of material entanglement. That of two are most important: approaching a spiritual master and devotional service under his guidance. And then all the others will develop. That all the qualities will develop. And the third thing is amanitvan, knowledge. One cannot understand this knowledge without humility. One must accept the truth that he is not God, that he is subordinate, and then he can ascend the staircase of knowledge and reach God. That and next 29 is here. Yeah. So, okay. Any questions?
Here, the best process for making the home given between consciousness. So if this whole process is right,
Yeah.
if we follow, say that there is no need of renouncing and that.
Yeah.
So is that okay to follow like that? Because ever since I read this many years back, we are doing these four things in our life, in our house, all
Yeah.
the day, every day. And does this mean that, now that I'm getting retired and all, I should leave home and stay with the temple or like that, or again, continue staying home?
That it depends on your mentality and approach of that. If you think everything is all right in my situation, that I'm just taking prasad, read the Bhagavatam and do a little service, that's not, no. Make sure you are engaged in Srila Prabhupada's mission.
I do personally preaching on Bhagavad Gita Bhagavatam twice a week. And I do a lot of book distribution.
Yeah.
And I don't take any interest in family affairs. I have, delegated everything, financial, material, everything to my sons. I just spend my time from 4 a.m. to evening.
Yeah.
Doing this. So
Then
I was wondering whether I should leave because
then you are an acharya. But it's good also because it's good to be sometimes out your comfort zone.
comfort.
Yeah, and go to the holy dam. You can go together
That's the reason I came
and
here.
serve there. Yeah, regularly go to the holy dam. That we get also family of in South London. We are good friends, and He's 5-6 years older. They are a little older than me, but every 3-4 months they are flying to India and visiting holy places and doing service in the temples and come back for inspiration, for deeper absorption. That's nice. So do something to get out of your comfort zone. And then it's as good as sannyas. If you are cooperating together, that's fine. But mostly it's very rare. But if husband and wife cooperate, so we have a lot of quotes of Prabhupada on these verses, so you can read it as your homework. Are there any other questions? Yes.
What information struck you as most profound?
What if? My personal experience there. That I understood I'm in trouble.
How?
That I'm a spirit soul entrapped in this body, and this life of the body is miserable. Yes. Yeah, people. Yeah, but it's a whole process. You want to hear that story? Oh, okay. But then we will end with that, and then tomorrow we continue. That, well, I don't like to speak about myself, but since you have asked, I will give you a synopsis of what happened. That we have to go back to 1981. I was an accountant at that time, just graduated. I was in the 70s. I was like a hippie. I'd hair till here, long hair. And I had a friend, he was an artist. And we went together to Antwerp. I never heard devotees, but we came at the big shopping street there. And at the other side, a devotee appeared. He was dressed in white. I didn't know what a devotee was, but my devotee, my friend, he was an artist and he knew the devotees and said, this is a Hare Krishna. And he was distributing magazines. And he was walking and trying to distribute. And there was a grandma with a grandchild. And she saw this devotee and she made such a turnabout around him that this is the devil. And in my heart, I was thinking, what has this person done to deserve such a bad treatment? I was defending me in my heart. And then my friend said, but he was an artist, and he said, this Hare Krishna, they have a very nice art. You should buy a magazine from. And I bought the magazine. And then we went to a folk concert of the Dubliners from Ireland, who were in a big hall. They gave a concert for 10,000 people, and we went to the concert. Then I went home. Then I got entangled. I got married. I was working in Ghent in an accountancy office. Then one evening, I think it was 1 year later, 82 or something, I was coming from the accountant's office and was waiting for the bus. And suddenly a devotee appeared. And he wanted me to give me a few books. But he wanted to give me these books, but I said, my bus is there, I must get on the bus. And he said, oh, give me all the little money in your pocket. So I went into my pocket, gave him all the coins, and got these 4 books. And then I came at home. On the bus, I was reading Krishna book by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. I read about the first lines. When I came home, I was thinking, nice. And anyway, somewhere or other, I put them on top of my bookshelf. There were many books. And it remained there for 3 years. 3 years. After 3 years, I got these books again in my hand. And said, it was, oh, nice stories from India, some mythology. And I started to read Krishna book every evening before going to bed. Prabhupada's instruction. I didn't know, but every evening I was reading a few pages. So after 2 years, I was halfway the book. After 2 years, it started to dawn on me that this Swami is answering all the questions of my life. And then it took another 2 years before I finished the book. That, yeah. I was married, yeah. Yeah. And at that time, I wanted to meet the devotees. And then I got that invitation for the Swami. And I met the Swami, and that's how it came. But it was a whole process, many years, that it's Krishna's plan.
Difficult to get, dissociated from the cat. Wife and children.
Oh, Krishna solved that quickly. Then I started to chant 16 rounds. 16 rounds. And my boss decided I need another bookkeeper. I lost my job. And anyway, there's more to say about that. But then my wife decided I need another husband. I got divorced. My family said, you are a Hare Krishna, we don't want to see you anymore. They completely rejected me. So what could I do? I joined the temple. And I'm still there. So I was deeply entangled in family life. Just Krishna plucked me out and put me in association of devotees. That it's wonderful.
It's like Vidurma.
But of course, then after when the divorce was there, I had to get the separation from children and so on. But I was so deeply engaged in the devotional service, I always felt happy, despite all these things, and that's wonderful. But, anyway, I'm not a good example, but that's what happened. I didn't want to divorce. I didn't want to break with my family, but they made it impossible. Krishna gave me no choice.
Your story is just like simple first.
Yeah, sure.
See, his friend took him to Bhakti Siddhanta. Your friend told him to buy the packet.
Yeah.
And then his wife preferred tea rather than silver.
Yeah.
So all this is like parallel.
Yeah, it's parallel. But anyway, I'm very happy that Krishna has done that. At the moment you don't see that, but later you see, oh, it's Krishna. Otherwise, I would still be entangled in all these things. But it's just plucked me out. Krishna, but I have the experience of the full experience that attachment to family life is evil, I can tell him. Because afterwards, when I met Bhakti Charumaraj, the day before he gave me first initiation, he asked me to come. And he said, well, Bhakta, what do you think about marriage? And I said to Guru Maharaj, it was too painful. I don't want it anymore. And he never spoke about it. Finished. But I would never marry again. Such a bad experience. Of course, now the aversion is getting away and coming up. But it's becoming more neutral. But at that time, what a bad experience. And these children, all these problems, and a wife who could not control her senses and went with another man, and it's a horror story, I can assure.
Story with Brahma is slow, but then come fast. It's a bit
Yeah.
slow in journey, but
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we meet tomorrow.
Did you-
Unfortunately not. And I about 12 years ago, he was at that time 50 years of age. He committed suicide. And I didn't see him for 40 years, unfortunately. 30 years I didn't, no, 30 years I didn't see him. Otherwise, I could try to help him, but I read it on the internet later. But,
It's super soul that's by the magazine.
yeah, sure. So he arranged that. Sure. Good.
Forget me, it's like, not but I- just like very that-
Yeah, but when I was defending this devotee, my heart, that was Akyata Sukriti.
Yes.
And therefore Krishna, I said, okay, give him a book. And 1 year later, I got a book. So that's just unknown service to a devotee. That's it's very powerful.
You could be devotee if you're treated like that.
Yeah, if you want to know more about that